Hello guys, welcome back. And today we're going to be talking about Tom Wilson and him appealing his 20-game suspension. Now, the day that Tom Wilson was suspended, I was busy that day. I was not able to make a dedicated video about it, but now, since Tom Wilson is appealing it, I might as well talk about my thoughts here, and might as well talk about my thoughts on the appeal as well. Now, a week ago, in the last preseason game between the Capitals and the St. Louis Blues, it was a pretty pedestrian back and forth. It was a preseason game. It really wasn't too much going on until Tom Wilson came up the ice with Oscar Sundqvist getting the puck. Tom Wilson came up the ice and pretty much flatlined him, headshotted him, whatever you want to call it. It was a dirty hit, and Sundqvist was injured for a little bit there, which was a real scare. Thankfully, he wasn't injured for a long time, but there was a scare that it would be some concussions involved. Now, in my opinion, there was no doubt about it. That was a very, very bad hit. That was a suspension-worthy hit right there. And for what Tom Wilson has done in his past, it makes it even worse. Of course, he has not really learned so far on what to do and what not to do, and it's not looking too great, of course, with that Sundqvist hit. It was just terrible. It was a headshot. It was a terrible hit. And for Tom Wilson, it was a terrible, bad look after he was supposed to be learning after the suspensions that he got last season. And of course, there was a big debate on how he would get suspended, would he get suspended, how much would he get suspended, and ultimately the NHL did suspend him for 20 games, and that was, of course, one of the largest suspensions that we've seen in a while for a hit especially, and in my opinion, it was a very good move by them. 20 games, I think, is more than he probably should have gotten, but because of his history and because of him doing it so recently, because of these suspensions coming so recently, I feel like, while I feel like it was more of a 10-game suspension hit type of hit, I feel like it's a 20-game suspension mostly because of him and how he should learn from this. Tom Wilson has had an ugly history, especially with suspension-type worthy hits. He's had a history of them, and even with the St. Louis Blues, he's had a couple of suspensions, and of course, last time was that hit on Aston Reese where he broke Aston Reese's jaw. It was an ugly situation, and of course, Tom Wilson ended up getting suspended for that. But of course, with this hit on Sundqvist, it seems like he hasn't learned yet. So really dropping the hammer and having him has a 20-game suspension, I'm hoping that he can learn from that, and hopefully that 20-game suspension will do him some good. And of course, this is where the appeal comes in. So, he was eligible for an appeal on the suspension. While it was 20 games, he still was eligible to overrule it. And with appeals, when it comes to NHL suspensions, it goes up to Gary Bettman. Of course, on the usual suspensions, I'm pretty sure they get ruled out by the NHLPA or something like that. But Gary Bettman makes the decisions on appeals, not normal suspensions. So, with this, Gary Bettman, of course, the NHL commissioner, will get first rules on how Tom Wilson goes after this, and of course, if that suspension will stay. And ultimately, he, of course, is the NHL commissioner. He can make the big decision here. If that stays at 20 games, if he lowers it, if there's no suspension at all, he really can control this. And let's say he keeps it, there's some other options for Tom Wilson to take as well. So let's just say Gary Bettman keeps his suspension where it's at 20 games. Let's say that he keeps it at that way and decides that, hey, Tom Wilson should keep that 20-game suspension. Tom Wilson can then go into a neutral arbitrator to maybe make some more decisions here. Now, he has that option. He's already had that option to appeal with this suspension. So if he really wants to, if he's really dedicated to this, he could go to a neutral arbitrator to settle this dispute. And obviously, if Gary Bettman were to do that, were to keep that 20 games, I think Tom Wilson would go the mile to make sure that he wasn't suspended that long. And of course, with this 20-game suspension already, Tom Wilson is losing a lot of money. He had to forfeit, I think, $1.2 million, and I don't even think that's cutting out of his salary. So he's losing salary every game that he misses. He's losing potential salary, potential in money there, and he already had to give up a lot of money for the NHLPA, and obviously that's a huge blow to his personal life and what he'll do there. So to me, I feel like Tom Wilson has the merit, has the, of course, the freedom to appeal. Obviously, he wants to play those games, get that money back, and of course play with the Washington Capitals. So on that end, I don't really blame him for appealing. Now, the appeal date has not been set yet. There has not been any date confirmed yet, so it really is open in the air for when this will get settled, but it'll likely be in the next couple of days when we see Gary Bettman make a final decision. And honestly, it just baffles me why Tom Wilson is even doing this type of stuff. He's losing money on every single suspension. He's losing money with all of this. And the Washington Capitals just gave him one of the biggest paydays that he's ever going to get. I feel like Tom Wilson should just play like he should. He has some decent talent. I'd say he maybe could have top 6 talent, but he's making these terrible mistakes and honestly terrible decisions. I'm not sure what he's doing out there, but it really has been a mistake on his part in the last couple of years. Honestly, I think he has talent out there, but if he keeps doing these type of stuff, it's not going to be a great career for him, and it might end earlier than he expects. But honestly, let's just say that Tom Wilson is in it for the money here. You know, he wants to get suspended less so he can play games to get that money. Let's just say he's in it for the money now. You'd think that he would want to maybe not hit a guy in the head, you know, maybe play a little bit more safe. But no, Tom Wilson doesn't do that. So to me, I feel like he's not in it for the money. He's not in it for the play. It just baffles me. What is the motive? What is the reason here for Tom Wilson? And there has to be a reason. It's not like he did it accidentally. He had so long to make up his mind on that Sundqvist hit. He had a lot of time to not hit the guy. And I feel like, honestly, at this point, there's no reason to do it. And Tom Wilson just might be a little bit crazy in the head right now. Okay, sure, maybe the guy might be a great guy in real life, but we're watching him on the ice, and this is the player that he decides to be. This rough, dirty player that makes bad hits after bad hits, terrible plays, dirty plays every year, year after year, and it's continuing to happen. If he doesn't learn after this 20-game suspension, it could be a serious fine against him, a serious games. I mean, 20 games is already very long, but let's just say he does another thing like this, something close or similar to this Sundqvist hit again, he's not gonna get that. He's not gonna get 20 games. He's gonna get 30, 40, maybe even a whole year, because I don't think the NHL is going to bear that. I don't think they're going to want that in their league anymore. For me, Tom Wilson has gotten chance after chance after chance to be much better than he has, and the NHL is finally taking a step forward in suspending him 20 games, you know, suspending him for a decent chunk of time. But let's just say he does this again. Let's just say he does another head check, another terrible dirty play. I don't think the NHL is going to hesitate. I think they're going to suspend him a long time, so let's just hope that he does learn from this incident, and finally, we can see Tom Wilson show some talent that he has. And of course, with that suspension hit, it was in the preseason. It was in the last game of the season. It's not like Tom Wilson is some 20-year-old rookie that, you know, was out of the OHL and he's a grinder and he's trying to make the Washington Capitals. He's a guy that just won the Stanley Cup. Was one of the main reasons they won the Stanley Cup. Just got this huge payday. He's not working for a roster spot, so I don't get that advance at all. I don't get that argument at all. He really is a bona fide NHL guy if he just stayed clean and if he would just show his skills. And honestly, in my mind, I don't see Bettman budging on this. I don't see him changing the suspension at all. I see it staying at 20 games, at least on Bettman's end, and we'll see what that neutral arbitrator, we'll see what happens there. But with Bettman, I don't see this changing. I see that still being a 20-game suspension, because I don't think Bettman really wants that guy in his league. I don't think he wants those style of plays in his league. And I feel like the 20-game suspension will hopefully give him a little bit of a teaching lesson, and hopefully this time around he'll actually learn from it. Again, he's trying to get that lowered, but I feel like since it's 20 games, at that 20-game mark, I think it'll finally start to set in his mind that he can't do that anymore, which is a win for the NHL. Now, there's also the argument that, okay, it was okay 20 years ago and Scott Stevens was doing it, so why isn't it okay now? That's one of the dumbest reasons I think I've ever heard, mostly because concussion research has exponentially gotten better in the last few years, and we know now that these type of hits can create such travesties off the ice for some players getting affected by this terrible concussions, you know, family ruining type stuff here, and we know a lot more than we did 20 years ago. So for that argument, I just don't get at all. And of course, it's a much different league now. He's done himself really no favors whatsoever. These suspensions are not doing him any good. It's not doing the players that he's hitting any good. And honestly, he's just ruining his career. He's ruining his reputation. And if he keeps going like this, it'll be too late. And I know I'm being pretty optimistic that Tom Wilson will learn from his mistakes, but I'm hoping that these 20 games, or whatever ends up being, finally teaches him a lesson. Of course, with those 20 games, hopefully it's long enough to teach him that lesson that, hey, you can't play like that anymore, bud. But also, the story is not done here yet. Again, we still don't know the appeal date. We still don't know what his actual suspension game and how long the suspension will be by the end of this. So this is still a developing story, and things could still happen. But I also want to hear about your guys' thoughts. Let me know what you think about the hits, the 20-game suspension, but also him trying to appeal his suspension. How long do you think it'll end up being? Do you think Gary Bettman will keep the 20 games, or will he budge on that? And of course, what do you think of Tom Wilson in general? But that's going for today, guys. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you like and subscribe again. Tell me below what you think about Tom Wilson, the suspension, and the possible suspension, possibly getting lesser games than we thought he was going to get anyways. I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.